You think you're so smart with your fancy law degree, but Nathan doesn't even love you anymore. He's mine now, and there's nothing your old, pathetic self can do about it. Those were the exact words that 22-year-old Yasmin Chen screamed at me in the marble lobby of Harrison & Associates, the prestigious law firm where I'm a senior partner. My name is Amanda Rodriguez. I'm 41 years old, and I've spent the last 15 years building my reputation as one of Chicago's most formidable family law attorneys. What this foolish girl didn't know was that I'd been documenting her affair with my husband Nathan for the past 4 months, and she'd just walked directly into the most expensive mistake of her young life. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't even change my expression. I simply pressed the security button under our reception desk and said, "Thank you for that information, Miss Chen. I'll be sure to include your statement in my files." The look of confusion that crossed her perfectly made-up face was almost worth the $127,000 I'd already spent on private investigators. Let me take you back to how this all began, because the truth is always more complicated than it appears on the surface. Nathan Rodriguez and I met in law school at Northwestern. I was 25, he was 27, both of us hungry and determined to make our mark on the world. He went into corporate law. I specialized in family law with a focus on high-net-worth divorces. We complemented each other perfectly, or so I thought. He was charming, ambitious, and had this way of making everyone in a room feel like they were the most important person there. I was methodical, thorough, and had an almost supernatural ability to find hidden assets during divorce proceedings. For 14 years, I thought we were a team. I supported his decision to leave his corporate firm and start his own practice. When he needed capital, I mortgaged our Lincoln Park townhouse that I'd purchased before our marriage. When his first 2 years were lean, I covered our living expenses, our car payments, even his student loan debt. I believed in us. More importantly, I believed in him. The first sign something was wrong came on a Tuesday evening in March. Nathan walked into our kitchen at 9:47 p.m., loosening his tie with one hand while scrolling through his phone with the other. "Amanda, I won't be able to make the Morrison anniversary party this weekend. Big client emergency." The Morrison anniversary party was important to me. Gerald Morrison was the managing partner at my firm, and these social events were where business relationships were cemented. In 15 years of marriage, Nathan had never missed one of these gatherings. "Which client?" I asked, not looking up from the Hamilton vs. Hamilton case files I was reviewing at our kitchen island. "You wouldn't know them. Small startup, very confidential." His answer came too quickly, too practiced. I didn't say anything then, but I made a mental note. In my profession, you learn to catalog inconsistencies. They usually lead somewhere interesting. The second sign came 3 weeks later. Our joint American Express statement arrived, and I noticed charges I didn't recognize. $347 at Le Bernardin on a Thursday evening when Nathan had told me he was working late. $156 at Agent Provocateur on a Wednesday afternoon. Lingerie I'd certainly never received. $89 at some boutique flower shop called Petals and Poetry every Friday for 6 consecutive weeks. A normal wife might have confronted him immediately, but I'm not a normal wife. I'm a divorce attorney who's seen this exact pattern in over 200 IC cases. I knew that premature confrontation would only make him more careful about hiding evidence. Instead, I did what I do best. I began building a case. I hired Marcus Webb, a private investigator I'd worked with on dozens of cases involving cheating spouses. Marcus was expensive, $275 per hour plus expenses. But he was thorough, discreet, and had never failed to deliver actionable evidence. Within 2 weeks, Marcus had a complete profile. Yasmin Chen, age 22, recent. Northwestern graduate with a degree in marketing. She worked as a social media consultant for various small businesses, though her LinkedIn showed long gaps in employment. She lived in a studio apartment in River North that cost $2,400 per month. Interesting, considering her sporadic work history. The photographs Marcus provided were damning. Nathan and Yasmin entering her apartment building together on Tuesday afternoons. Nathan's BMW parked outside an upscale spa where Yasmin was. getting treatments that cost more than most people's monthly salaries. The two of them at dinner at restaurants I'd never been to, him leaning across the table to feed her dessert like some lovesick teenager. But the real treasure came when Marcus managed to get audio recordings. Illinois is a two-party consent state, so anything recorded without both parties' knowledge isn't admissible in court. However, Marcus was creative. He befriended the bartender at Gibson's Bar and Steakhouse, where Nathan and Yasmin had their regular Thursday evening meetings. The bartender, Jimmy, had his own reasons for disliking cheating executives. His own wife had left him for her boss the previous year. Jimmy was more than happy to leave his phone recording while he served their section of the bar. The recordings were devastating. Not just the intimate conversations you'd expect from an affair, but detailed discussions about Nathan's plans to divorce me and his concerns about protecting his business assets. What made my blood run cold was hearing him describe strategies to hide money from me using tactics I'd taught him about other cases over dinner conversations throughout our marriage. She's so focused on her own cases, she has no idea I've been moving money around. Nathan's voice was clear on the recording from April 15th. By the time she realizes what's happening, everything will be protected in offshore accounts she'll never find. What about the house? Yasmin's voice was slightly slurred. She'd had 3 Cosmos by that point in the evening. The house is in her name from before we married, so that's hers. But everything we've built together, everything her income helped fund, that's going to disappear. I listened to that recording 17 times, sitting in my home office at 2:17 a.m. on a Sunday morning, while Nathan slept peacefully in our bed. Something changed in me that night. Not anger. Anger is hot and impulsive and makes you stupid. What I felt was something colder, more focused. I felt like a surgeon preparing for the most important operation of my career. Over the next 6 weeks, I conducted my own financial investigation. What I discovered was breathtaking in its scope and hubris. Nathan hadn't just been unfaithful. He'd been systematically looting our marriage for months. The $45,000 loan I'd co-signed for his office renovation had been deposited into an account in the Cayman Islands. The $23,000 computer equipment purchased for his firm had actually been jewelry and designer clothes for Yasmin. I found the receipts in a folder he'd carelessly left in his car. Most egregious was the discovery that he'd been billing personal expenses to his business, and then deducting them on our joint tax returns. Dinners with Yasmin were listed as client entertainment. Her spa treatments were categorized as marketing consultancy fees. He'd even charged the engagement ring he'd bought her. Yes, he'd proposed to her while still married to me, as a promotional gift for a client. The total amount of marital funds he'd diverted or stolen was $186,847.32. I arrived at this number after weeks of forensic accounting, cross-referencing bank statements, credit card bills, and business expenses. But Nathan's financial crimes were just the beginning. Through Marcus's continued surveillance, I learned that Yasmin wasn't just a mistress. She was actively involved in planning what they clearly saw as the heist of the century. The recordings from late April revealed their timeline. Nathan planned to file for divorce on June 15th, the day after our 15th wedding anniversary. By then, he believed, all assets would be sufficiently hidden that I'd be left with just the house and whatever was in my personal accounts. It's perfect, Yasmin said on a recording from April 28th. She's so busy with other people's divorces, she won't see her own coming. Until it's too late. That's when I decided it was time to get creative. Through my professional network, I reached out to colleagues who specialized in international asset recovery. Patricia Wong at Wong & Associates had successfully traced hidden assets in 12 different countries over the past 5 years. I retained her services at $400 per hour. Patricia's team discovered not just the Cayman Islands accounts, but a web of financial vehicles Nathan had established. There was a Delaware LLC, a Nevada corporation, and even a Swiss bank account he'd opened during a business trip to Zurich that I now realized had been a romantic getaway with Yasmin. While Patricia traced the money, I began preparing the legal groundwork for what would become the most comprehensive dissolution and financial recovery case of my career. I documented everything. Every hidden asset, every lie, every fraudulent tax deduction, every theft of marital property. I also began building a separate case against Yasmin herself. Under Illinois law, a paramour who knowingly interferes with a marriage and receives gifts or money derived from marital assets can be held liable for conversion and unjust enrichment. The threshold for proving knowing interference is remarkably low, and I had dozens of recordings of her discussing their plan to hide assets from me. By late May, I had assembled a legal case that was, frankly, a work of art. Every financial crime was documented. Every hidden asset was located. Every lie was cataloged with supporting evidence. I'd even discovered that Nathan had been claiming Yasmin as a dependent on his business tax returns, listing her as a marketing consultant, despite the fact that she'd done no actual work for his firm. But I wanted more than just financial victory. Nathan and Yasmin had spent months mocking my intelligence, my age, my supposed naivety about their affair. They deserved a reckoning that matched the scope of their betrayal. That's when I decided to let them come to me. Through Marcus, I arranged for Nathan to overhear a conversation suggesting that I was planning a surprise 15th anniversary party for June 14th. The conversation, held at a restaurant where Marcus knew Nathan would be dining with a client, included details about how trusting and devoted I still was, and how I'd been saving money for months to throw him the party of a lifetime. The bait worked perfectly. Within days, Nathan's timeline accelerated. He began moving the final assets out of our joint accounts, confident that I was too blinded by anniversary planning to notice. He even asked me with breathtaking audacity if I needed help planning our anniversary celebration. I want it to be perfect, I told him on June 1st, while internally calculating the final total of his theft. After everything we've been through together, you deserve something special. The amateur psychology was almost insulting. Nathan actually hugged me and said, "Amanda, you're too good to me. I don't deserve you." For the first time in months, he was absolutely right. On June 10th, Yasmin made her first mistake. She came to my office. Harrison and Associates occupies the 32nd floor of a downtown Chicago high-rise, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan. Our lobby is designed to intimidate: marble floors, leather furniture, and walls lined with legal awards and photographs of our attorneys with judges, politicians, and business leaders. Yasmin arrived at 3:15 p.m. wearing a white sundress and carrying a designer handbag I recognized from Nathan's credit card statements. She approached our receptionist, Diane, and announced that she needed to speak with me about a personal matter regarding my husband. Diane, who had been with the firm for 12 years and had seen every variety of drama imaginable, calmly offered to take a message. Yasmin declined and insisted on waiting. I was in a client meeting when Diane buzzed me. "Amanda, there's a young woman here who says she needs to speak with you about Nathan. She seems agitated." I excused myself from my client and walked to the lobby. Yasmin looked up from her chair when she saw me approaching, and I watched her face change as she took in my appearance. I was wearing my favorite courtroom outfit, a charcoal Armani suit that cost more than her monthly rent, paired with Louboutin, heels, and the Cartier watch Nathan had given me for our 10th anniversary. "You must be Yasmin," I said pleasantly. "I understand you wanted to speak with me." Her confidence flickered for a moment, but she recovered quickly. "We need to talk privately." I smiled and gestured toward one of the conference rooms. "Of course. Would you like some coffee? Water?" We sat across from each other at a table where I'd negotiated millions of dollars in settlements over the years. Yasmin fidgeted with her purse strap and seemed to be gathering courage for whatever speech she'd prepared. "I don't know how to tell you this," she began, "but Nathan and I have been seeing each other for several months. We're in love, and he's going to leave you." I nodded thoughtfully. "That's interesting. When did this start?" "January," she said, clearly surprised by my calm reaction. "Look, I know this is hard to hear, but he's not happy with you. He feels trapped in your marriage, and he deserves to be with someone who appreciates him. Someone like you. Someone exactly like me." Her confidence was returning. "He's already put plans in motion to protect his assets from the divorce. You should probably get a lawyer. I almost smiled at that. That's very thoughtful advice. Can you tell me more about these plans? What happened next exceeded my wildest expectations. Yasmin, apparently believing she was speaking to a devastated wife in denial, proceeded to detail Nathan's entire financial strategy. She told me about the offshore accounts, the Delaware LLC, even the Swiss bank account. She mentioned specific dollar amounts, dates of transfers, and the names of the banks involved. I listened, occasionally nodding or asking clarifying questions, while mentally comparing her information to what Patricia's investigation had already uncovered. Yasmin's knowledge was comprehensive and detailed, proof that she wasn't just a beneficiary of Nathan's theft, but an active participant in planning it. After 23 minutes, I was tracking the time carefully. Yasmin seemed to realize that I wasn't reacting with the devastation she'd expected. "You don't seem very upset," she said suspiciously. "Oh, I'm processing everything you've told me," I replied. "It's quite a lot of information." That's when she made her second mistake. Standing up abruptly, she leaned across the conference table and delivered the line that would eventually cost her $75,000 in civil penalties. "You think you're so smart with your fancy law degree, but Nathan doesn't even love you anymore. He's mine now, and there's nothing your old, pathetic self can do about it." I pressed the security button under the table and smiled. "Thank you for that statement, Miss Chen. I'll be sure to include it in my files." Two things happened simultaneously. Diane's voice came through the intercom asking if I needed assistance, and Yasmin finally understood that something had gone very wrong with her plan. "What files?" she demanded. "Harrison and Associates employs a security firm called Blackstone Protection Services." Within 90 seconds of my alert, 2 uniformed guards arrived at our conference room. I calmly explained that Miss Chen was trespassing and making threats against a member of the firm. "That's not true," Yasmin protested. "I came here to warn her about her cheating husband." The security guards looked at me, questioningly. I maintained my professional composure and said, "Miss Chen arrived unannounced and uninvited. When I attempted to conclude our meeting, she became hostile and made threatening statements. I'd like her removed from the premises, and I want this incident documented for potential legal action." What Yasmin didn't know, what neither she nor Nathan had ever bothered to learn, was that all conference rooms at Harrison and Associates are equipped with recording equipment for client protection purposes. Every word of our 23-minute conversation was captured in high-definition audio and video. As security escorted a protesting Yasmin toward the elevator, she made her third and final mistake. She turned back toward me and shouted, "Nathan was right about you. You're a cold, calculating bitch, and that's why he never loved you." Those words, delivered in front of witnesses including 2 other partners from my firm, constituted defamation per se under Illinois law. I returned to my office and immediately called Patricia Wong. "Patricia, I need you to expedite the asset recovery documentation. We're moving to the next phase." "How quickly?" she asked. "I need everything ready by tomorrow morning." "Amanda, that's going to cost extra for overnight analysis and documentation." "Bill me whatever it takes." That evening, Nathan came home at his usual time, acting like nothing had happened. He had no idea that Yasmin had visited my office, and she apparently hadn't told him about her disastrous performance earlier that day. "How was your day?" he asked, kissing my cheek while I prepared dinner. "Very educational," I replied. "I learned several new things about asset protection strategies." He actually smiled at that. "Always the dedicated attorney. That's what I love about you." I continued chopping vegetables and didn't respond. There would be plenty of time for conversation tomorrow. June 11th started early for me. I arrived at the office at 6 a.m. to find Patricia's final report waiting in my inbox. The documentation was comprehensive. 186 and 847.32 in stolen marital assets, traced through 4 different jurisdictions with complete banking records and transaction histories. At 8:30 a.m., I filed for divorce in Cook County Circuit Court. But this wasn't just any divorce filing. It was accompanied by motions for emergency asset freezing, demands for forensic accounting, charges of dissipation of marital assets, and claims for punitive damages based on financial fraud. At 9 a.m., I filed a civil lawsuit against Yasmin Chen for conversion, unjust enrichment, intentional interference with marriage, and defamation. I also filed complaints with the IRS regarding the fraudulent business deductions Nathan had claimed over the past 2 years. By 10 a.m., Patricia's associates were serving restraining orders on Nathan's banks, freezing all accounts pending forensic review. Nathan found out about the divorce filing at 11:20 a.m. when his attorney called him. He found out about the frozen accounts at 11:47 a.m. when his credit card was declined at Starbucks. My phone rang at 11:52 a.m. Amanda, what the hell is going on? My accounts are frozen, I've got process servers at my office, and Jim Morrison just called asking if it's true that you filed for divorce. I was in my office looking out at Lake Michigan, feeling calmer than I'd felt in months. Nathan, I think we should talk. Can you meet me for lunch? Lunch? Amanda, I've got attorneys calling me, banks calling me, and apparently the IRS is asking questions about my business deductions. I don't have time for lunch. I think you'll want to make time, I said quietly. Meet me at Gibson's at 1 p.m. And Nathan, you might want to call Yasmin and ask her about her visit to my office yesterday. I hung up before he could respond. Gibson's Bar and Steakhouse held special significance. It was where Marcus had recorded many of Nathan and Yasmin's planning conversations. I'd specifically requested the same table where they'd sat during their April 15th meeting when Nathan had bragged about hiding assets from me. He arrived at 1:07 p.m. looking haggard and confused. Nathan was ordinarily meticulous about his appearance, but today his tie was askew and he'd apparently forgotten to comb his hair. Amanda, I don't understand what's happening. I waited until he was seated before opening the manila folder I'd brought with me. Nathan, I'm going to save us both time by being direct. I know about the affair with Yasmin Chen. I know about the 186,847.32 salaries you've stolen from our marital assets. I know about the offshore accounts, the fake business deductions, and your plan to divorce me on June 15th with all assets hidden. He went completely still, staring at me with an expression I'd never seen before. I also know, I continued, that Yasmin came to my office yesterday to warn me about the affair, not realizing that I was already fully aware. During that visit, she detailed your entire financial strategy and then made several threatening and defamatory statements that were recorded by our security system. Nathan's face had gone gray. Amanda, I can explain. I'm sure you can. But let me explain something to you first. I slid a document across the table. This is a forensic accounting report detailing every fraudulent transaction, every hidden asset, every lie you've told over the past 6 months. Patricia Wong's team has traced money through 4 different countries and 12 different financial instruments. He picked up the report with trembling hands and began reading. I watched his face change as the scope of my investigation became clear. The divorce petition includes demands for full restitution of stolen marital assets, plus punitive damages for fraud and breach of fiduciary duty. Under Illinois law, dissipation of marital assets can result in an award of up to 3 times the amount stolen. Nathan looked up from the papers. 3 times? That's over $500,000. $541.96 to be exact, plus attorney fees, investigative costs, and court costs. I paused to sip my water. There's also the matter of tax fraud. The IRS is very interested in your creative business deduction strategies. Tax fraud? His voice was barely a whisper. Nathan, you claimed Yasmin as a dependent business expense while she was actually your mistress. You deducted romantic dinners as business meetings. You wrote off jewelry and spa treatments as marketing expenses. The penalty for fraudulent tax deductions can include both civil fines and criminal charges. I could see him trying to calculate damage control, his attorney mind working through possible defenses. But there were none. Patricia's investigation had been too thorough, and my documentation too comprehensive. What about Yasmin? He asked. Yasmin is facing her own legal challenges. She's being sued for $75,000 in conversion and unjust enrichment. That's the value of gifts and payments she received that came from stolen marital assets. There's also a defamation claim for the statements she made at my office. Nathan slumped back in his chair. Amanda, I never wanted this to happen this way. How did you want it to happen, Nathan? You and Yasmin spent months planning to steal nearly $200,000 from our marriage. You were going to leave me financially devastated while you started fresh with your 22-year-old girlfriend. It's not what you think. Oh, I think it's exactly what I think. Would you like to hear some of the recordings? His eyes widened. Recordings? I smiled for the first time during our conversation. Nathan, you and Yasmin had your planning meetings at the same restaurant for months. You sat at the same table, ordered the same drinks, and discussed your schemes in detail. Did you really think no one would notice? I reached into my purse and placed a small digital recorder on the table. Would you like to hear the conversation from April 15th, where you bragged about how focused I was on my own cases while you moved money around? Or perhaps the one from April 28th, where Yasmin said I was too busy with other people's divorces to see my own coming. Nathan stared at the recorder like it was a venomous snake. The beautiful irony, I continued, is that you used strategies against me that I taught you during casual dinner conversations about my cases. You forgot that I wasn't just your wife. I was your professional colleague who specialized in exactly this type of financial investigation. What do you want? He asked finally. I want full restitution of stolen assets, plus punitive damages as determined by the court. I want you to cooperate fully with the IRS investigation and accept responsibility for the fraudulent deductions. I want our divorce to be finalized with a complete financial settlement that reflects your betrayal. And if I agree to all of that, then we can handle this through negotiation rather than a public trial. Your professional reputation might survive, and you might avoid criminal charges for the tax fraud. Nathan was quiet for several minutes, staring at the forensic accounting report. Finally, he looked up at me with something that might have been respect. You've been planning this for months, haven't you? I've been responding to your planning, Nathan. You declared war on our marriage in January. I just chose to fight back with better weapons. What happens to Yasmin? That depends on her. If she cooperates with the asset recovery and pays restitution for what she received, she can probably avoid criminal charges. If she continues to fight, she'll learn that threatening an attorney in her own law firm is an expensive mistake. Our server approached to ask if we'd like to order lunch. Nathan looked at me questioningly. I don't think we need lunch, I said, but thank you. Nathan signed preliminary agreements that afternoon. Within a week, he'd arranged for the return of all stolen assets, plus 20% interest. The IRS investigation resulted in $47,000 in penalties and fines, but no criminal charges were filed. Our divorce was finalized 8 weeks later with Nathan accepting full financial responsibility for his actions. Yasmin proved more difficult. She initially hired her own attorney and attempted to fight both the civil lawsuit and the asset recovery demands. Her lawyer quickly realized that she had no viable defense. The evidence was too comprehensive, and her own recorded statements had eliminated any possibility of claiming ignorance about the source of the money Nathan had spent on her. After 3 months of expensive legal bills, Yasmin agreed to a settlement. She paid $75,000 in restitution and damages, issued a formal apology for her defamatory statements, and signed a non-disclosure agreement preventing her from discussing the case publicly. The final irony came 6 months later. Nathan's law practice, damaged by the scandal and depleted by legal fees and penalties, was struggling financially. He approached me through intermediaries to ask if I might consider a loan to help him stay afloat. I declined. Today, I'm living in the same Lincoln Park townhouse, which is now solely mine. My law practice is thriving. Word spreads quickly in legal circles about successful asset recovery cases, and I've become the go-to attorney for complex high-net-worth divorces involving hidden assets. Nathan moved to Milwaukee and works for a mid-sized corporate firm. He's still unmarried. Yasmin apparently moved back to California and works in social media marketing for a tech startup. I learned several valuable lessons from this experience. First, that the skills that make you successful in your profession can also protect you in your personal life. Second, that patience and preparation are always superior to anger and impulse. Third, that people who underestimate you based on their assumptions about your emotions or intelligence usually provide you with exactly the tools you need to defeat them. Most importantly, I learned that dignity isn't something that can be taken from you. It's something you maintain through your own choices and actions. Nathan and Yasmin thought they were orchestrating the perfect crime against a naive wife who was too busy and too trusting to notice their betrayal. Instead, they walked into a comprehensive legal strategy executed by someone who'd built a career on unraveling exactly their type of scheme. As I tell my clients now, the best revenge isn't getting angry. It's being better prepared, more patient, and more strategic than the people who betrayed you. Justice, I've learned, is often just competence applied with precision at exactly the right moment. And sometimes when someone shows up at your office to threaten you while you're surrounded by security cameras and legal colleagues, justice is also tremendously satisfying. The $75,000 Yasmin paid me sits in an investment account I've designated for continuing education about fraud investigation techniques. Nathan's restitution allowed me to renovate my home office into exactly the workspace I'd always wanted. But the real victory wasn't financial. It was the moment Nathan looked across that table at Gibson's and realized that the woman he'd betrayed wasn't the victim he'd imagined, but the attorney he'd forgotten he was married to. Sometimes the best revenge is simply being exactly who you've always been, just more so.